So, the somatic symptom and related disorder category in the DSM-5 used to be known by the name of somatoform disorders. But now, with the new DSM, there's a little bit of a different name for the category. And there are also a couple of minor shifts to some names of specific disorders contained within this category, and sort of like the removal of a couple. What we're going to go over in the somatic symptom and related disorder category is we're going to go over what a somatic symptom disorder is. Then we're going to go over conversion disorder, as well as sort of what used to be called hypochondriasis and is now called illness anxiety disorder. So, by definition, a somatic symptom or related disorder is a psychological disorder in which the symptoms take a somatic or bodily form without an apparent physical cause. And what this means is that sometimes people experience like very real physical symptoms, but there's not a quote like real physical cause for them. I can think of like an example such as a tension headache. It's stress and it's tension and it's anxiety, which builds up to the point of creating a migraine. And so the migraine itself is physical, but the cause is something that's not apparently physical. Somatic symptom disorders we're actually in the news lately, very recently, with the case of Justina Pelletier in Massachusetts just a couple years ago. If you're not familiar with the case study, I'll definitely link to a couple of Globe articles about her. But long story short, there was a case of Boston Children's Hospital claiming that she had been misdiagnosed as having something else previously, and they said that she really had a somatic symptom disorder. And that her parents were engaging in, quote, like medical child abuse by not treating her for that. The hospital took over custody of Justina and actually kept her in the hospital in the psych ward for months, if not a year or something. So if you are interested in reading about that really interesting ethical case study, but also talked about somatic symptom disorders, which is how it relates to this. So one of the specific types of somatic symptom disorders is something called conversion disorder. And as I was giving the definition of a somatic symptom disorder, I hope some of you were thinking that it sounds somewhat similar to where Sigmund Freud got his start. I know we hate to talk about Freud, but if we can go back in our memories to learning about how Freud really started as a psychologist, he started out as a traditional medical doctor who started to see patients who had physical symptoms for which he couldn't find any sort of physical cause. And nowadays, we would say what Freud was seeing is what we call conversion disorders. In the DSM-5, sometimes also called functional neurological symptom disorder, but conversion is also used. And this is where a person experiences a very specific and localized physical symptom for which no physiological basis can be found. Examples of this localized and specific physiological symptom. Paralysis, maybe of just a specific body part, blindness, maybe even just at a certain time of day or in a certain location. Usually, conversion disorder involves a problem with a part of the body that relates directly to some sort of stress. As an example, you might have a quarterback who oddly seems to lose sensation in her throwing hand right before the big game. And so it seems that this very specific physical symptom is related to some sort of anxiety. And that's what Freud would say is happening, that there's anxiety being converted into some sort of physical symptom. Because this is so Freudian, conversion disorder is one of the more controversial diagnoses. There are some people who think it's more of a catch-all term that is applied to things for which we just haven't found a cause for yet, but we will find a physical cause for later. That being said, there has been an instance of this in the news just within the past couple years, and so I'm gonna link y'all to a case study of that in the YouTube description of this if you want to see like a real world example of conversion disorder, actually almost like an outbreak of it in a town. And then last member of this somatic symptom category is illness anxiety disorder, which you might know as hypochondriasis. You might have heard of some called a quote hypochondriac. Two reasons we don't use that term anymore. One, hypochondriasis as a term has been replaced with illness anxiety disorder, and we wouldn't really call someone a hypochondriac because that's not really person-centered language. So now we talk about someone having an illness anxiety disorder. And what this means is that the individual's physical symptoms are not abnormal. So it's definitely different from conversion disorder because there's not something troubling like paralysis or blindness that's happening. It's normal physical symptoms. Maybe it's like a stuffy nose like I have, or a cold, a normal like, little something that's not quite going right. But what happens is someone with illness anxiety disorder sees that as a sign of some more serious disease. And every one of these little symptoms becomes an indication that there's something horribly wrong. And someone who has illness anxiety disorder doesn't listen to reason about their symptoms. If a doctor tells them, yeah, it's just a cold, or it's just the flu, or, you'll get over it, it's normal, you just like tweaked your muscle. The person won't hear it. They'll think their doctor's wrong. They won't be reassured, and they'll actually probably just go find another doctor and keep doctor hopping because they just won't listen to reason. It's not that they're being stubborn. It's just a product of their mental illness. And I'm going to link you to a video example of that as well in the comments.